Elden Ring is FromSoft's most successful launch and game, bolstering an impressive 12 million worldwide sales as of March 16th since its release on February 25th, 2022. To put that into perspective, Dark Souls 3 became the most successful FromSoft game after reaching 10 million total sales in May of 2020, 4 years after its release. Elden Ring would beat that in less than a month. Game of Thrones author George R.R. Martin has been credited for his work on Elden Ring. In interviews, he revealed that he was tasked years before the game's release to create a detailed description of Worlds Between and the lore that encapsulates Elden Ring. As the game was being developed, George was brought on for occasional consultation, but he was mostly just shown how the world he created was being brought to life. Elden Ring's name may be a reference to one of the original names for Dark Souls, Dark Ring. FromSoft decided not to go with that name because it could be misinterpreted as a euphemism for an anus. The grafted blade greatsword obtained from Leonine Misbegotten may be based on the Iron Throne from Game of Thrones, as the multiple bladed greatsword resembles the design. Occasionally at night, leaves from the Erd Tree can be seen cascading down from the sky. Players may note they receive a buff similar to the gold pickled Foulfoot, meaning during this time players receive an increase in rune gain. Rolling in poison and scarlet rot causes the player to be covered in it, making the effect of the debuff not only last longer but also deal more damage over time. There is hope, however, as rain and rolling in water will clean it off, as well as soap. Enemies have a chance to spawn with glowing eyes. These enemies drop between 4 and 5 times the amount of runes they normally would. A Souls staple is the recurrence of illusory walls, a mechanic also present in Elden Ring. There's a hidden wall in Volcano Manor that requires multiple hits to make it disappear, as its coating no longer has the event to make it fade away, thus giving it almost 10,000 health. This would be later fixed in update 1.04 to make the wall no longer breakable. Wearing shoes and being barefoot leaves different footprints in the sand. Open-toed shoes still leave regular footprints though. Flame chariots can be plunging attacked, resulting in a custom animation that kills the enemy in an explosion. Regular plunging attacks aren't present in Elden Ring, likely due to the newly added free jumping, but crouch attacking is a new type of attack that can prove effective, as each weapon type has a unique variant. Area of effect healing spells will damage cursed undead, and heal over time spells will act as poison, ticking down their health. A player discovered that health upon enemy death items like the Blasphemous Blade work with bloodstains of players who are riding Torrent when they die. Torches can be used as a weapon and source of light, but certain torches in Elden Ring have additional features. Sentry torches can be used to see cloaked Black Knife assassins and other invisible enemies. The Beast Repellent torch can be used to prevent beast-type enemies like rats and wolves from attacking the player, and St. Trina's torch can be used to inflict sleep buildup. The statues that point out the direction of dungeons are always directing the player to catacombs. These statues are that of Rosus, and according to the description of Rosus's axe, the dead easily lose their way, and have always been in sore need of a guiding hand. Rosus, being the usher of death, is guiding the player toward those who need guidance themselves. The dead. The singing harpy, otherwise known as the chanting winged dame, is most recognizable by their telltale song that tends to give them away before they're even seen. These enemies are actually singing in Latin, and when translated reveals they're lamenting about the greater will's loss of influence after the shattering. Crystal daggers cause magic stone-bodied enemies to frenzy after a few hits, causing them to attack their allies. This even works on larger enemies like golems and burial watchdogs. One of the first bosses, Margit, the Fell Omen, can actually be removed from Stormvale Castle without having to win that particular boss fight, since Margit is simply a projection of Morgott, the Omen King, and Stormvale Castle isn't required to get to Lindell. The player can defeat Morgott and Margit will no longer appear at the castle. A recurring NPC in FromSoft games makes their return in Elden Ring. Patches. Patches can be summoned for the Star Scourge Radon fight, but he promptly runs away. When discovering Patches in Murkwater Cave and fighting him down to half health, he'll beg for mercy, then act as a merchant. He'll sell an item called Margit's Shackle, which can be used against Margit to temporarily stun them and any other Omen enemy type. This item can be used again in the fight with Morgott. There's also another shackle that could be used during the Mohg and Mohg the Omen boss fights found beneath Lindell. Certain chests will trap the player and warp them to a secondary location against their will. These chests can actually be avoided by dodge rolling away from them before being transported. Trap chests will always reset, so the player doesn't miss out on anything if they initially dodge the snare. Stone Sword statues use up to 2 Stone Sword keys to unlock them, and this is represented visually. Stone Sword statues that only require 1 will have 1 Stone Sword key already present, whereas ones that require 2 won't have any. Another Souls staple is the reference to the Japanese manga and anime series Berserk. There's Berserk references in all Dark Souls, and the same can be said for Elden Ring. The regular greatsword bears a striking resemblance to the oversized blade Guts uses in their series. The sword monuments could potentially be a reference to the Hill of Swords Memorial, and the character Blaidd is very similar to Guts, even missing his iconic eye. Blaidd's name is the Welsh word for wolf. This may be a stretch, but the Witcher character Geralt is called Gwynbleidd. which translates to white wolf, so there's a chance that this is a nod to another popular fantasy franchise. Gatekeeper Ghostok steals a portion of dropped runes, including when the player dies exploring Stormveil Castle. If they're killed, then the runes are the regular amount again, and you gain the stolen ones back, but only if Godric is still alive. Ghostok also stalks the player throughout Stormveil Castle, and can be seen in different locations if the player backtracks at certain points. Fia in the Round Table Hold will offer free hugs. She bestows a debuff on the player that reduces their health by 5%. This can be undone by using Baldachin's Blessing, the item that's causing the debuff in the player's inventory. As it turns out, she's taking your life force to resurrect dead nobles. Most Souls games don't have a pause option, but there is one in Elden Ring. Simply open the menu explanation in the help section and the game will actually pause. Normally, certain undead enemies like skeletons require the player to destroy their soul to actually defeat them, but holy damage kills these enemies right away. A new status effect introduced in Elden Ring is Madness. Madness buildup can be caused by certain attacks and through the Frenzy Towers. Buildup can be reduced from the towers by wearing a helmet, thus obscuring the player character's head. Yeah, you probably noticed that the effect is the same here regardless of helmet or not, and that's my fault. As it turns out, Madness buildup is based on the player's focus stat and not whether or not they're wearing a helmet. Sorry for the misinformation. I'm gonna go back to editing now. In Noxtella, there are electric slimes that can set off a chain reaction of electric explosions, killing them in a row. But there's another enemy type you can do this with that isn't so obvious. Using poison on the barnacle enemies in Lyranov Lakes overfills them with the toxin and causes them to burst, which in turn causes the barnacles within range to also overflow in a chain reaction. The same thing applies to the Scarlet Rot variant, only using Scarlet Rot instead of poison. Cracked pots aren't consumed on use, and only use the other material when crafted. This is why the number the player can carry for certain throwables is so limited. Certain enemies like the Virgin Abductors have special moves that grab the player if not avoided. Grab attacks that deal multiple hits can be button mashed out of to end the animation early. Weather affects the damage of spells and skills. During the rain, fire spells deal less, but lightning deals more. The damage difference is marginal, but good to know if you have spells to choose from. Lightning damage also spreads in water and acts as an area of effect. D is the mysterious figure tasked with rooting out undead in Lands Between, and even recruits the player in his quest to find Deathroot for their friend Gurong in the Bestial Sanctum. But did you know D has a brother? In the inevitable moment when D dies, their armor can be gathered from their body. Going to the aqueduct facing cliffs in northern Nokron, and giving the sitting person D's armor set will trigger a stammering of recognition from the figure. D's brother will kill Fia in the Deeproot Depths after her quest, and the player has the option to fight him, though either way D's armor is returned. D's brother can then be summoned to help in the fight against the valiant gargoyles. It's revealed through dialogue that D's real name is Darian. According to a video from YouTuber Zully the Witch, Torrent has a number of unused animations that were cut from the game but still exist in the files. A number of these animations are roaming behaviors like laying and sitting, but one of them is a back kick that would have been used to launch medium and small enemies. This implies that Torrent could have acted as a separate entity from the player, like with summons. Rainbow stones can be used to judge if a player can survive a fall, as they break on impact when they exceed the safe height limit. In previous Souls games, the result of a dead merchant means one less place to shop, but Elden Ring introduces the bell bearing. When a merchant NPC dies, they leave behind a bell bearing unique to their shop, which can be given to the Twin Maidens in the Round Table Hold to add items to their stock. This includes the nomadic merchants scattered around Lands Between, meaning the most convenient way to shop is killing them on sight and using their bell bearing to add to the Twin Maidens shop. The nomads of Lands Between act as guides and merchants for the player to barter and gain information from. What we know about them is that they were once a unified people that were separated by some calamity, leaving few behind to roam the lands and peddle their wares. As revealed through exploring the Cathedral of the Forsaken in the subterranean shunning grounds, a number of bodies and enemies resembling that of the nomads are strewn throughout, even playing the same stringed instrument. Because both these enemies and the merchants use frenzy spells, and this cathedral is the location of the Three Fingers, we can assume that the nomads actually worship the frenzied flame, and were sealed beneath Lindell as punishment. The Virgin Abductors are modeled after the Lady of Volcano Manor, Tanith. The player can actually get to Volcano Manor early by intentionally getting captured and killed by an abductor way beneath Rhea Lucaria. The player will wake up in a dungeon and have to find their way out, eventually finding themselves on Mount Gelmir. When Elden Ring first released, a number of features were accidentally not included in the initial version. Patched later in Update 1.03, the characters Nefeli Low, Gatekeeper Ghostok, Kenneth Height, and Dialos were given additional phases to their questlines, as well as the addition of the character Bjarn, whatever, with the inclusion of trackable NPCs on the map, increased drop rates and lowered prices on smithing stones, and new summonable NPCs for boss fights makes this seemingly small update change major elements of the game. In order to ensure their actions don't stray from the expectations of the Greater Will, certain people are given wolf-like servants in the form of shadows. Malekith and Blythe are both shadows granted by the Two Fingers, Blythe to Ranni and Malekith to Queen Marika. Malekith is tasked with protecting the Rune of Death for Queen Marika, but when a fragment is stolen by Ranni, Malekith decides to implant the remaining rune inside themselves to better protect it. A major result of the implantation was Malekith's insatiable hunger for Deathroot. Malekith and Gurong the Beast Clergyman are one and the same. It's theorized that Gurong is still alive after the Malekith fight due to the crumbling Farum Azula having certain space-time altering properties like the hidden boss Placidusax. If the player finished giving Gurong all 9 Deathroots before the Malekith fight, Malekith would recognize him, and there would be unique dialogue. General Radahn can ride his normal-sized horse because he studied gravity magic and can make himself lighter. Radahn has a very close bond with his horse, as it's his only companion during the Scarlet Rot-induced madness he finds himself in. Radahn had named his horse Leonard. There's an ongoing theory that George R.R. Martin added a hidden Easter egg within the names of the demigod families. Godfrey, Godric, Godwyn, for example, being G, Rennala, Ranni, Rykard being R, and Mohg, Miquella, and Marika being M, forming George R.R. Martin's initials. Radagon's red hair is implied to be a curse from the fire giants, as the giant's red braid item description reads, "Every giant is of red hair, and Radagon was said to have despised his own red locks. Perhaps that was a curse of their kind. Radagon's hair would be passed down to their children." Rennala is the only non-demigod to be in possession of a Great Rune. She was gifted the Great Rune of the Unborn by Radagon in the form of an amber egg. After Radagon's departure to become the second consort of Queen Marika, Rennala was dishonored and Rhea Lucaria revolted against her leadership. Rennala, now heartbroken, focuses her powers on resurrecting her daughter Ranni, who willingly cast aside her body to rebel against the Greater Will. Arguably the hardest boss in the game, Malenia, can be found near the base of the Halig Tree, where she rests after her infamous battle with Radahn. That battle not only resulted in Radahn's madness, but the entirety of Caelid being consumed by her Scarlet Rot. Malenia is the blade of Miquella, her own brother who was torn from the Halig Tree by Mohg and presumably killed. Though Elden Ring's achievements include 3 endings, Age of Fracture, Age of Stars, and Frenzied Flame, there's actually an additional 3 endings we know of: Duskborn, Blessing of Despair, and the Age of Order. The Frenzied Flame ending is the only ending to lock the player from the others until a redemption quest is completed. Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, has 3 sons: Godwyn, Morgott, Mohg, and he also has a daughter, foster daughter of Gideon Ofnir. Nefelilo is the only offspring we know of post-banishment Godfrey, who took the name Hoaralu when they became tarnished. There's a massive plot twist hidden within a secret area of Lindell. Before it becomes the Ashen Capital, take the elevator down from the Erdtree Sanctuary and read the message on the ground. Regression alone reveals secrets, is the hint given to the player, who at this point in the game had just been given access to the Law of Regression spell. Using this spell in front of the statue reveals the aforementioned plot twist. Radagon and Queen Marika are one and the same. This open-ended reveal leaves fans to speculate if Radagon had just become a god and filled the role that Marika once had, or if Marika and Radagon are quite literally the same person. Fans speculate, since Radagon is the first phase of the final fight, that as punishment for the shattering of the Elden Ring, Marika and Radagon were returned to one form when imprisoned in the Erdtree. And that's 50 Fast Elden Ring Facts. Thanks for watching. Until next time.